Now, again, we saw this overpressure event. We saw how it went from sitting there before the shot to after the shot. You can see all that expansion of just everything. His skin, though, in particular, is expanding wildly. That is consistent with something inside his body creating a lot of pressure, pushing his body out. It's not consistent with an explosion from the outside, as some people have speculated. This is full evidence that we had an overpressure cavitation event. So how did that happen? How did that bullet come to dump all of its energy in Charlie's body? Now, this is where we can get to some pretty conclusive answers. So now we have to start thinking about some other shooting spots that can both solve for a couple of things. For the bullet to have entered Charlie's body into a state in there, we need two things to be true. It needs to have come from a higher off-axis angle, so it had a chance of hitting the spinal column, and it needed to come in from a much higher angle too, so that it was already heading down, because it's too much to expect a relatively flat bullet to hit something and bounce down. That's just not how these things work. Again, it would have to transfer all of its energy and then be deflected. Charlie's spine would have had the ability to resist a 2,000-pound force compressed into a little tiny thing with a cross-section of just 0.30 inches. Not really going to happen. Here's a couple other spots that we have to consider. So this is the area. Charlie's tent would have been right here, facing this way, because this is, I believe, is right up axis. This thing confused me for a while. I thought they were stairs on the first things I was watching. It's a waterfall feature. And so this helps guide us where we are. Again, this is the promontory where that video was shot from over here. There's a post right here. We're going to have to keep an eye on all these things, because as we speculate about if we were conducting an investigation, where would we look very, very carefully? There is a shooting angle that's right through between these two trees, comes right down the waterfall. And again, that waterfall would have pointed right at Charlie's tent. So this is a potential shooting spot here. And guess what? If you're in that spot, the measured angle is that would have come in at about 43 degrees, and it's a 20-degree downslope angle because the building is closer. It's almost as high as the other shooting position, but that's much further back, so that lowers the angle. And so those are the measurements we got. About a 43-degree off-axis angle, 43 degrees, coming in 43 instead of not 9, 43. And also 20 degrees. Yeah, let's put it this way, 20 degrees instead of 10. Now we're at an angle where there's a chance that thing's going to come straight into the body. Now it really honestly has a chance of doing that from that shooting position. So that's where I would have looked at. A 20-degree angle here, this puts it, as you can see here, this is set at 20 degrees. Now this thing's coming much further down into the body. And as well, once you're at a 20-degree angle, you start to hit these bones guaranteed. The rib bones, if you're off axis, but also you start to hit the center of the spinal column. And at a 43-degree angle, that puts that bullet coming in. First thing it's going to encounter is the center mass of the thoracic vertebrae. If it's gone that low, maybe C7, but I think it might have hit T1. Best guess. Of course, some autopsy photos and some x-rays would help us resolve all of this pronto. And we don't have access to any of that yet. Also, this comports with something else. Notice if we come across here, we do still transect the jugular, also the carotid. This is a little bit of a gruesome detail, but I think it's important. When Charlie slumped over, if you saw this blood, but it sort of slumped out. And it also took a second or two for that to happen. Not a second or two, but about a half a second to us. There was a little gap between him having this hole, right, in his neck, and starting to slump, and then this blood sort of spilling out. It wasn't spurting out. So that tells me that his heart was stopped at that point in time. Because if you transect the carotid and the heart is pumping, very high pressure, it's pretty obvious. If you haven't seen it, it's not forgettable. So when people have arterial damage and their heart is pumping, you get a lot of spurting. His arterial pressure was already at 0. There was no spurting. So what did we see? We saw this little gap, the hole shows up, a little gap, and then we saw this sort of blood just sort of slump out. That was his, probably a combination of both the jugular or the venous blood, maybe even some of his carotid artery, maybe But what we saw is it slumping out. And my explanation is that huge overpressure shock, it pushed the blood away, and then it just sort of had to come back and slump out. So Charlie was already dead with mechanical damage to the heart, I'm going to guess here, because even if you decapitate somebody on a guillotine, the heart's going to pump for a little while, because that's how the heart is. It just doesn't give up the ghost that easily. So his heart had stopped. How did his heart stop? His heart stopped because that bullet dumped down into his chest cavity and probably caused a lot of mechanical damage, as well as obviously all the neuronal damage and all that other stuff. So this fits very, very well with this. We need a new shooting angle that can account for what we're seeing. Now, what's interesting is there was this great video taken from the side. Thank you to the person who sent that to me. I got it off your Google Drive. Really appreciate it. High quality. I trust this video a lot. This one was off to the side. Charlie's left. If Charlie's facing forward, stage left. They're over here. They're facing this way. This is the promontory. This is that other video camera we're looking at. But this is about 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds after the shot has been taken. Look at this guy. I know eyewitnesses can be a little iffy, but this guy is pointing, and he's pointing right along the axis, more or less, of this promontory axis, right? It has a face. He's pointing along. And hey, look at this guy. We got cowboy hat guy here too. Yep. They're both sitting here looking in a certain direction. If I place this guy, he's sitting right about at the top. These are all these tiers of concrete and grass and concrete and grass, concrete and grass. This guy is just off of the promontory prow, and he's just a little bit off this side of it. And that places him. There's the promontory prow. There he is right there. He's pointing here. He's pointing somewhere up on this building. He's not pointing this way, which is where the alleged shooter would have been. He's clearly not pointing that way. He's pointing here. And cowboy hat guy is like doing the same thing. He's like, they're both looking at the same spot. I would want to talk to red shirt guy if I was investigating this. Red shirt guy would, I think, have some of the most most of these people, a lot of, pandemonium and screaming and usual stuff going on. But this guy, he just stands up, hands in his pocket, and he's like, right there. So maybe that's meaningful, maybe not. So that's red shirt guy, and also cowboy hat guy. He's one lower down, looking in the same exact direction. This is where I would be looking, because these are the shooting positions that actually match the physics of what we see in that frame, and the fact that Charlie has the bullet in his body, the fact that it's nearly impossible to consider that a 10-degree angle, 10-degree downslope, 30-06 is going to be stopped by a human neck or deviated within those first few inches so it can actually make it down into the body. The request that this 30-06 hits soft neck tissue. I mean, if it had hit a collarbone, I'd be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to have to guess a little. It hits the softest part of the human body. This is the softest part. I mean, this is just, there's nothing going on here, right? It's like a little bit of cartilage, some veins, a lot of muscle, but that's about it. And that it entered here, and that within a few inches, because remember, it can't have traveled all 6 inches and then bounced back in the body. It would have had to have deflected within the first 2 to 3 inches, tops, to go down into the body cavity. You saw all the ballistic gels with me. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. There's not a single example where you can shoot ballistic gel and you see the bullet immediately within an inch or two take a really hard turn. The reason for that, 2,000 foot-pounds of force traveling along a single vector is not easily dissuaded that it should go in a whole new direction. That's just physics. I'm not going to suspend my physics here. I didn't do it on 9/11. I just refuse. Physics is what it is. So best guess for me, though, is this is where I would be looking very, very carefully. That should be scoured very, very carefully for clues right there, because that matches everything almost perfectly. Again, that's just fitting the data that we have at this point in time.